We're now going to start scanning for the Interscalene Brachial Plexus block, which is a really great technique for shoulder anaesthesia and analgesia. I'm going to use a high frequency linear probe, which I'm going to place in the Supraclavicular Fossa, initially aiming to identify the Subclavian Artery. The right hand side of the screen as you're looking at it is medial, the left hand side of the screen as you're looking at it is lateral. So in the centre of the screen now you can see a circular hypoechoic structure, that's the Subclavian Artery. And as I slide the probe laterally, you start to appreciate this bunch of grapes type of appearance of structures over here. So this is going to form the brachial plexus. There's all the brachial plexus here. In order to make imaging a little bit easier, I'm going to utilise the virtual convex mode, and that turns a linear probe into a virtual convex probe and gives you a bigger field of view. So starting by scanning the supraclavicular fossa, the next thing I'm going to do is rotate the probe so I'm scanning up into the neck, because you usually perform an interscalene brachial plexus block at about the cricoid level. So let's start off looking at the supraclavicular fossa. We're going to focus on those nerve structures right in the centre of the screen. And as we slide up the neck, we're going to see they're going to line up in a particular orientation. And as they line up, we've got these structures now appearing right in the centre of the screen over here. You've got some more structures on the screen. You've got on the right hand side of the screen a muscle, and the left hand side of the screen a muscle. Those are the scalene muscles. The muscle on the right is the anterior scalene muscle. The muscle on the left is the middle scalene muscle. And the groove between the two of them is the interscalene groove. And now if we focus our attention right in the centre of this interscalene groove, this is where the interscalene brachial plexus lies. If we ask our model to do a quick, hard and fast sniff for us, you'll notice that those nerves dive down as those muscles tense. That's a very classical appearance of what happens with the interscalene groove. Having identified those muscles, I'm now going to start to scan north up the neck, and I'm going to focus my attention on what happens on these two structures. So there's a structure here and a structure here which is most superficial. I want you to focus your attention on both of those as I scan up the neck. As I scan up the neck, you're going to notice that the one that's in the middle of the screen is going to start to dive down. And it's going to disappear now into this kind of U-shaped structure here. This is the transverse process of C6. So that's C6 disappearing, and now I'm going to scan even more north. And as I do that, you'll see this black circle here, that's the C5 nerve root. We're going to see that disappear, and you see it's disappeared there into the transverse process of C5. So that's C5 going into the transverse process, and you'll notice it's got two tubercles. It's got an anterior tubercle and a posterior tubercle. As I slide down, there's C5 emerging. I'm going to come down even more, and as I come down even more, you're going to see there's an anterior tubercle of C6 or Chassaignac's tubercle, and the posterior tubercle of C6, and there's C6 emerging, and it has this classical bifid appearance. So you've got C5 lying above C6. For completeness, I'm going to carry on scanning lower down until you see something happen at the bottom of the screen. So right at the bottom of the screen here, you've got the C7 nerve root coming out, but at this point I'm going to put the colour Doppler on. And the reason I'm going to put the colour Doppler on is to highlight that rather large vertebral artery. We don't want our needle to go anywhere near that vertebral artery, and it's important as a reference technique. So whenever you're scanning in the neck, it's always important to use the colour Doppler to make sure you're nowhere near those vascular structures. So now, having generated this nice image, I slide medially. I've got the internal jugular vein and the common carotid artery. Superficial to all of those structures, you've got the Sternocleidomastoid Muscle. And that Sternocleidomastoid Muscle is right the way over here, lying above the great vessels in the neck. That's the anterior scalene, that's the middle scalene. So if one was going to perform an interscalene brachial plexus block, the idea is to put local anaesthetic around these two structures, so C5 and C6. You can either bring your needle in plane from the posterior aspect of the probe, and if you bring your needle in plane, you'll see it arrive through here and put your local anaesthetic around the nerves there. Or you can needle out of plane. If you needle out of plane, you would aim to pop your local anaesthetic on one side of those structures. Because it's very evident on the screen here, I have to point out one structure. As I slide up and down the neck, right over where the cursor is, you'll see there's a little structure within the fascia. This is the dorsal scapular nerve, which lies within the substance of the middle scalene muscle. This is one of the potential risks of performing an interscalene brachial plexus block, is that a needle coming in from the posterior aspect of the screen may impact on that nerve. So it's really important that you observe for it if it's there, and adjust your needle path to avoid that structure. So for a successful interscalene brachial plexus block, you need to generate an image, orientate yourself from medial to lateral, get the two scalene muscles on the screen, identify the interscalene groove and the C5 and C6 nerve roots, bring your local anaesthetic in and put local anaesthetic around the C5 and C6, avoiding the vertebral artery down below.